In my first very full day of retirement, I have to say these lights are very bright. I'm just not really ready for it. My actual official last day as Deputy Secretary was Friday, but yesterday I ended up turning in the BlackBerry. That was a good feeling. The iPad, I'm going to miss it terribly. The credit card, the government credit card, and ended up fielding a lot of calls from the office. I know that those will dwindle very quickly in my retirement here as Deputy Secretary, but I've had a really good run, a little over 4 years. We did a lot of great things. I walked into the auditorium and I saw Rob Post from the center, and Rob and I spent a lot of hours together on issues around advertising food to children, working on My Plate, all the great work that's gone on. And I just really want to acknowledge he and his colleagues and all the great work that they've done at USDA, trying to take those dietary guidelines that in so many ways are very dry and put them into a more usable form. Park Wilde is here, one of your steering committee members, and he and I sat through, I don't want to count how many hours of lectures in our Tufts auditorium about the dietary guidelines and the food guide pyramid. And I think My Plate is an incredible breakthrough. It's a very simple graphic that has this leading message: half a plate, fruits and vegetables. It's simple, we get it. Okay, good. Simple, we get it. How do we get there, though? That's the big question, and that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity over the couple of days that you have together for some really exciting conversation. When I first joined the administration, I was thrilled that the First Lady was considering nutrition issues as part of her signature efforts, and it came to pass with Let's Move and her work with veterans and their families. Those are her two big areas, and that's been incredibly powerful, and I so admire the First Lady. But in those early day meetings in the White House before the launch of Let's Move formally, sitting around with Melody Barnes and a lot of colleagues from across the federal family, there was a lot of talk about whether or not the First Lady should focus on obesity or hunger. I have to tell you, I was petrified. I said, oh my God, we cannot divide the nutrition community in that way, because that is just going to diffuse what power they have. It's going to be very confusing. And so for the next period of time throughout to this moment, I've always said, in every speech that I've given, is that obesity and hunger stem from the same root cause, and that's lack of access to good, healthy food. There's no reason to pick. In the same way, I was thinking of that this morning because when Eric and I talked yesterday, and he said, well, Kathleen, I'm like, Eric, I'm going to show up in those pink fuzzy slippers, really? I haven't had any deep thinking yet. What is it that you want me to talk about? And Eric said, I really wanted you to talk about how there's silos, and he mentioned it in his introduction. And there are the sustainable ag guys over here, and the nutrition guys over here. And my response, you'll remember, is, Eric, I've been talking about that for 20 years. What is it that I can add anew today that will bring those communities together in a way that provides a kind of powerful coalition for change, food system change? What is it new that I can say? I'm not sure I have it, but here's my thought. When you look at the data on fruits and vegetables, where our fruits and vegetables come from in this country, what we're seeing is an increase in imports. We're not nearly at half a plate, and that cuts across every socioeconomic class. We're not nearly where we need to be on half a plate, fruits and vegetables. But what I noticed looking at this data, when you take out bananas on fruit, bananas account for about 50% of our imports any year that you look at it. In 1990, 12% of our fruits were imported. By 2008, it was 25%. And I know there are more recent data that came out since then, which is a little bit higher. I just don't have those at my fingertips. When you look at vegetables and melons, including frozen vegetables, In 1990, we imported 8% of what we consumed. In 2008, it's 15%. So I'm thinking that there's really a lot of agenda that converge around building local and regional agriculture that brings the nutrition community together with the sustainable ag community in new and powerful ways. When I look at that as just a leader at USDA, what I was arguing is we're leaving opportunity on the table. A lot of those fruits and vegetables that we're importing are fruits and vegetables we can be growing here domestically. And when you look at the data in an even more surgical way, you see a lot of those imports are imports of fruits and vegetables that are being in the middle of the season of when we're growing here. That seems crazy to me. When we've got rural communities struggling and farmers and ranchers not making their payments in the smaller and mid-sized operations, seems like there's a really glorious opportunity there to build a food system that provides economic opportunity to them. And particularly when we realize that we're in this profoundly meaningful transition in American agriculture with the average age of farmers and ranchers nearing 60 and a third of our farmers over age 65. A lot of the new people coming into American agriculture are not coming from the farm or ranch. They're not farm kids. They're new. How are they going to make a living in American agriculture? It's not likely going to be finding capital to pick up a 5,000-acre commodity-producing farm. Likely their stepping stone is going to be local agriculture. It's going to be fruits and vegetables, a high-value crop that you can do on small acreage. So the question I just want to throw out there, as American dietary patterns change, and we've seen some shifts for the good as of late, particularly in the obesity numbers, and it certainly is a very loud and national conversation that's going on about dietary patterns. So I'm going to assume that American dietary patterns are slowly but surely changing for the better. We should be asking ourselves, how do we meet this healthy food need with domestic production? That's the Venn diagram for the crowd here today. So a few things that we've been working on USDA, and I still have a foot in both worlds. I still think I'm working there. I know it's going to take a while to take off the uniform and perhaps have the joy of reclaiming my own voice fully, because when you work in the administration, everything you say goes back to the President and the First Lady, particularly with everything we do at USDA, the First Lady, the Secretary, and all of the institutions. So I had to speak for the institution, and it's going to take me some time to practice getting my own voice back again. I'm looking forward to that, so bear with me. But I do want to talk about some of the really exciting things that we've been doing in that Venn diagram at USDA, and encourage you to think creatively about how to explode that universe. A lot of work has been going on around EBT at farmers markets, electronic benefit transfer. In fact, the technology has moved on in the 4 years I was at USDA. Most farmers now want to have a mobile app. They want to be able to have that kind of availability to take SNAP and WIC benefits and senior market coupon benefits at the markets. There have been a number of foundations. Gus Schumacher at Wholesome Wave has been a crazed advocate for this sort of thing for years, and I think he's been visionary in it. But that's a way that we address food access issues and farmer economic viability issues with one fell swoop. And it's worked incredibly. We've put a lot of new money into that, a lot of new thinking. We've seen farmers markets skyrocket. We've seen redemption of our nutrition benefits skyrocket, and I think we've only scratched the surface to date. Mobile markets. We've talked a lot over the last several years about food deserts, areas of low access to food, where we know in some cases people are buying food at corner stores, sometimes liquor stores, paying more money for less healthy food. Got access problems. But where I come from in rural America and a lot of the rural parts of the country, you'll never have the population threshold to sustain a 24-hour or 7-day-a-week or even a 5-day-a-week grocery store. So we've been investing in mobile markets. So when the bookmobile comes on Wednesday night and the community health van comes on Wednesday night to a rural community, the grocery store on wheels comes to that community. How do we explode out that kind of concept to make sure people are getting access to the food they need? And that's not just in rural areas. I know we worked with Mayor Emanuel in Chicago to outfit an old bus to retrofit it so it could be a mobile market going into some inner cities where they needed access, particularly to fresh produce. Commercial kitchens, that's been a blast. Some of our dollars have gone into commercial kitchens so that for the farmers, they get to put up value-added products. But for the community, there have been a lot of important cooking classes, demonstrations, canning, all of that sort of thing. And that has really brought people into the kitchen in a really exciting way. I've been hearing a lot of interviews with Michael Pollan this week on the radio. I haven't read his new book, Cook, yet, but I find his arguments pretty compelling and his enthusiasm about being a dad and bringing the family around the dinner table and cooking again. The commercial kitchens actually can play a role in that. It's been an interesting intervention. I think we'll see more of that. Farm to school. There's no issue that I'm more jazzed about than farm to school. Part of this was my doctoral student, Michelle Ratcliffe at Tufts, taught me through her work, and we wrote some papers together, that children who are engaged in garden-based learning do better in their science literacy. They're more environmentally aware. Check, check, good, good. But the real key thing here is that they're willing to try and they actually consume more fruits and vegetables beyond what was grown in the garden. So that early access point in farm to school, most of our farm to school programs do have a school gardening component. Really, really exciting. We've been focused in the first couple of years of a new farm to school program at USDA on elementary school, some high school, but we really now need to get down to the preschool level where eating habits initially form. Lots of opportunity there for nutrition, lots of opportunity there for small, mid-sized regional farmers who are seeking institutional outlets to sell their food at. I've been to some exciting farm-to-school programs around the country. I went to one in Oklahoma where the kids knew more about agriculture than I did. I'm glad nobody had that on film. They just really knew their Oklahoma ag facts. They were entirely enthused, and the farmers come and eat lunch with them in the classroom. I've been to places, Rhode Island is one example, where they have trading cards, like baseball trading cards. But the trading cards are about the farmers who grow their food with all the stats about the farm. And I've seen kids really trade them and enjoy them with great enthusiasm. So farm to school, I think, is in that Venn diagram and is really worth some additional thinking on everyone's part. And perhaps my newest launch of an effort is really trying to take our food banks and make them food hubs. So there are a few examples around in the country, but it has occurred to all of us that we have USDA dollars going into building, constructing food banks, putting in shelving, providing cold storage, helping build a loading dock, all that sort of stuff, helping fund a truck. Great. Another part of USDA is helping fund food hub work. It's nascent, but it started. A food hub being a central place where smaller farmers bring their product. It's aggregated. It might be lightly processed for further distribution to institutional buyers. So we're funding that over there and this over here. And the question really is, why couldn't it be a singular investment? Because when you have trucks going out to the community with food from some of these food banks, they could, on their route, pick up food from the farmers, bring it back to the centralized facility, so you have a transportation efficiency there. You could have shared cold storage, et cetera. And having talked to another Eric Olson at Feeding America, Eric Olson's a good name in the nutrition community. You notice that? Yeah. I was asking for the data and what kind of fresh produce is in the food banks, and it's actually better than you would imagine, but there's still a huge amount of opportunity for improvement. And if you had that very close connection with the farmers in the food bank, I bet you would see a very sizable increase in the donations from those farms to the food bank for distribution to needy people. Great opportunity. Still largely on the drawing board. But that's the kind of innovation I think we need when we're talking about the Venn diagram and bringing these communities together to work arm in arm, hand in hand, in a very useful way. I think there's a lot of opportunity in SNAP Ed. $400 million a year in SNAP Ed. I know that depending upon what week in Congress, we may or may not have a farm bill, and people are looking for savings in the SNAP account. That's not something the administration supports, but certainly I've heard different times over the last couple of years that SNAP Ed was being eyed for possible reform or elimination. I say, here's a great opportunity to make SNAP Ed work harder and better in that Venn diagram. So those are some of my opening thoughts. I was supposed to give a few little tidbits and then answer your questions. But again, I think that the local regional food space is a real space where communities come together. It's largely about healthy food access. And I think it creates a great platform for your future work. So thank you very much, and I'll take questions. Boy, tough morning, tough crowd. I'll have you know that I started in a tough way too. You know, when you're deputy secretary, you get a car and a driver. I had to drive myself here this morning and park a few blocks away, and then I had to figure out how to do the meter thing. I never really pulled it off. So, anything you want to ask me in my civilian life? Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Thank you very much, Catherine. You mentioned toward the end of your talk. Thank you. You mentioned toward the end of your talk that there's an opportunity for SNAP Ed to work better and work harder. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that. Very interested in that topic. Thanks.
No. I mean, I could, but I think that's really the work of this group here. I think that Jerry Mann and Kevin Concannon at USDA have been working really hard trying to figure out how to get some of those SNAP Ed dollars working harder on the obesity agenda. But I think that I'm not ready to sort of say how those dollars should be used, but I think that clearly they're at risk and that we need to show that they have a higher utility in order to maintain them. So I think coming together of the kind of minds that are in this room and on the web, coming together and having some sort of formulated thinking about SNAP Ed and its future course could be quite helpful. Let me just say that the elephant in the room when you talk with nutritionists and sustainable ag groups always is that sustainable agriculture equals ching-ching more expensive food. And that's a lot of times been why I think the silos have been unchanged. I had a big fruit and vegetable theme, the half a plate theme, in my few comments to you. And let me just say that early on in this administration, I heard many of our leaders say that if people ate more fruits and vegetables, if they ate in a more healthy way, it would be really much more expensive, and it would be budget buster for the federal government. I think people have rethought some of those statements, but I heard that from the First Lady. I heard that from Kathleen Sebelius. We actually have some pretty good studies from the Economic Research Service at USDA that talk about the per cup equivalent cost of fruits and vegetables. Hey, if you want to eat raspberries in January, you'll pay a dear price. But there are a lot of fruits and vegetables, and particularly if you have some seasonality concept in your head, that are incredibly inexpensive. So I think we need to think about food access, and this is not, just high-end yuppies going to, I don't even people use that term anymore, but you know what I mean. High-end people going to fancy supermarkets buying really expensive food. That's not what we're talking about. And I think we need to get over this divide that if we have a more sustainable food system, we're going to price poor, hungry people out of the food that they need. I don't believe that. I challenge that. And I think that that bugaboo has been something that has hurt the efforts for reform for decades now. We need to address it, talk about it openly.